in this industry, what would that be?
So in preparation for this, we obviously had a call, but I also reached out to some colleagues around the country in different companies. And one that really struck a chord for me was, you know, we worry about the opportunities to get into the industry, but I hear from, and then I realized the light bulb went off in my own head, where are the growth opportunities once you get in? How do you get to that next level within? And as companies become, you know, in some cases much more vertically controlled, do you have the opportunity to raise to senior levels in management? Do you have the opportunity to take on a morning show? And we've just seen, you know, thankfully at Cumulus over the last few years, the top-down structure has gone away, but we just saw at iHeart, it appears that, you know, that there is less autonomy on the local level. So those decisions are being made somewhere else, and does somebody in that cluster, for example, have the opportunity to get to that level where they can maybe move from an air talent to a music director to a program director like I did over the last 25 years. I think if we're going to grow our business, we not only have to worry about people joining our radio stations from outside, people who want to get into radio, but once they get in, we need to figure out a way to build a structure for them to raise their ranks and their profile within their own companies and within the industry.
Yeah, and particularly, as you said, with the elimination of jobs that we're seeing in our industry right now. Yeah. We'll come back and talk about that. Scott.
Well, the main thing that keeps me up at night is the intense amount of sirens coming up from the streets outside the Omnia Hotel. And truthfully, the real deal is how does our business stay relevant and evolve with what's around us? I came into the business through the entertainment factor. I thought it was an exciting, dynamic business to be in. And so it's more of a puzzle and challenge. I hope that we have the right visionaries and leadership that can take our industry and evolve what we do and make that same kind of excitement and dynamic for the youth that are coming up today, because they are our future. And I think a lot about that. I care a great deal about it. I work with a lot of people whose lives depend on what we do. And those kind of things weigh deeply on me. I care a great deal about the emotional health of our talents and our managers. And I am always thinking and worrying, I guess, if you will, that's one of the stressors in life, about how fast can we move with what's moving around us.
Okay, Beverly.
I echo the theme of people that the first two panelists have talked about. And the thing that keeps me up at night is not only recruiting and finding people to join our teams, but what really concerns me is, as I talk to a lot of people in the hiring process, is that I'm afraid that the business model that exists in radio today has bred out the crazy and the creative piece of it. As Buzz talked about, the models, the business models, whether it's top-down or however your company is set up, demands of people these days, and program directors, operation managers, it demands of people to be multitaskers and generalists. And it requires someone to be, you know, maybe moderately creative and really good at executing a list of 100 things to do every day. Those are the kind of people that have our radio jobs right now in some really important positions of OM and PD. But to do what Scott's talking about and grow our radio stations in creative ways, that requires a level of crazy that we've bred out because they don't fit the business model. And thank you. And that, you know, no one, it's hard to tell your manager, I'm going to go find crazy today. I got to go hire a crazy person. But in reality, if we're going to do radio like we saw in the research project yesterday, right? It talked about, like, talent is talent and can sometimes be in the way, but really great talent is additive. If we're going to find that kind of talent, guess what? That comes with a dose of crazy. And we're having a really hard time maneuvering a way to get, I think we need to get some crazy back in the business. And we're going to have to build around that, but that's what keeps me up at night, because right now it's a bunch of really great multitaskers. I'm one of them, right?
I think I know that early in my career I was very lucky because I worked with amazing, great talent as a PD, and one time I was being interviewed in a trade publication, and I said, well, some of the talent I work for, and the interviewer went, you work for, and I went, wow, I never thought about it, but I said it, but I think it's true. I mean, how many times do we see programmers who are oppressive of their talent and come over the top and they want it to be about their way, versus letting that crazy get out there. And when you think about it, these are people in a room by themselves talking to a piece of metal, and they're convinced other people are listening, and there's a party in their head no one else has been invited to.
So can I just add one thing? So yesterday, Mike Dungan was on a panel here, and he said 100% of the artists that he works with are crazy, have the crazy thing, right? 100%. And Mike Dungan managing artists is not a whole lot different than a program director managing a stable of talent. And there's some crazy that goes with that. And I say crazy, what it is, it's creativity. Yeah. And our ability to recognize it, nurture it, accommodate it, I think is important going forward.
Brent, what keeps you up at night?
I echo what all three of them have said. I think there's so many things with people and in our stations and how we're working with them and finding new talent. And I know we're going to talk about a lot of different subjects, but I'm going to talk about people in a different way. What keeps me up at night is our listeners and how we stay relevant in our listeners' lives. As we saw yesterday, I mean, radio is being redefined like crazy as people are now, they think their smartphones are radio. And how we keep up with that and how we stay relevant in a world where so many new artists are being thrown out and how people are discovering them and how we stay relevant in that role of music discovery. And I think our format's at a really interesting point right now because I think, everyone here would echo, there are more new artists than ever because of the way that music can now be distributed. And I worry sometimes about, how are we keeping up with that and how are we, using the model that we have and evolving it. I think about the last 5 years and in my opinion, the only real superstar, I mean, see him on a billboard, you know immediately who it is that we have created is Luke Combs. I think Dan and Shay are very close. And I think there are a lot of other artists that are starting, but we have always been a superstar format. And are we doing our jobs to our listeners, helping to raise that next level of superstars and keeping everything familiar and introducing them to who they need to know in a way that best reflects our audience and what they have told us that they love.
Yeah, and when I was a corporate programmer running programming at Cumulus, my greatest frustration, and I'm going to address this to Beverly and Scott as corporate programmers, would be one that I'm sure as individual programmers, Buzz and Brent felt as well, which is I can't really control the audience. You're trying to entertain, you're trying to do the thing that attracts them. I would find myself corporately being judged on a report card that is Monday through Friday, 6A to 7P, adults 25-54, year over year. And being up 4 years in a row didn't matter, when you start to hit the critical mass and you're coming down. And so there's no way we're going to see a rating research report a little later, but country radio's ratings are eroding, and I really don't see us doing anything different to stop that. And so to the two corporate programmers, I would ask, agreement, disagreement, your belief, does it keep you up at night? What do we do about that?
It doesn't keep me up at night necessarily, but back to the people issue. I think that remarkable talent is what will make the difference. I know at Hubbard, we're always looking for the remarkable talent, AKA crazies. So we've got a big crazy magnet. So if you're crazy and you want to have a good time and express yourself, come to Hubbard. But I think that's the difference maker. And I think that where the world we're in now, with the amount of music that's available, at no other time in history has there been more exposure to different genres in music than now. And so how are you going to cut through and stand out by just doing the same thing the same way and playing the same music the same way in an industry where the consumer exposure and options is more than, it's 1,000 times larger than it was even 10 years ago. And so the only thing that's going to do that, unless we get lucky in a music phase, is what you do in between the records, and that's a control issue. And I would argue that we now, more than ever in the history of our business, are surrounded with so many different platforms, social media and everything else. And it's like you can try and experiment with things, then if they become sticky and work, they go to the next level. And before they hit prime time, and if prime time is our airwaves to generate those ratings, you have all kinds of other pieces beyond just normal conventional research and ratings and things like that. Because personally, the way I recruit for talent now is I do look at social media. I mean, if I find a YouTuber in a given market, in a geography, and there's millions of hits, I study what is making that person stand out. And success leaves clues. And so you look at those kinds of things. I've had lots of conversations with young talent who don't even think of radio anymore as even an option. And yet they're performers, they're engaging, they're doing a lot of things. And I've had conversations about, look, let's make your career multidimensional. Ryan Seacrest, there's a lot of people that are in television, now in social media. Make radio part of your portfolio, because entertainment is entertainment. In television, you know, we've got 1,000 choices. And where does all the audience migrate to? The best shows. Yellowstone comes out, I don't care where it is, I'm going to seek out that great talent. Word of mouth, we're in the greatest word of mouth medium there is. Radio, 98% of people still find a new radio station by word of mouth. So one way we can accelerate word of mouth is have remarkable talent that produce extraordinary, compelling listening. I think we can take lessons from TV, the art of teasing, right? What it adds to that stickiness. So some of it's training, some of it's talent, but back to the point of what is worrying me is that our industry has sort of homogenized and lost sight of the fact we're in the entertainment business, and we don't have any new dynamic leaders. I think it starts with the right leader, right? You got to have the right programmer who can understand that and seeks that out, and not just the generalists who are punching buttons and checking boxes. I think we've done it to ourselves as an industry, and it's sad to see. But I will say, for the great talents and the crazies out there, your stock is going way up because there's less and less and less of it. So as new youth come into our business, the ones that can kill it will come in at a level financially that's, I think, will be unprecedented in our business because they're rare, and it's supply and demand. So get your entertainment game on and get a bigger wallet.
Beverly?
Everything that Scott said, I agree with. The other thing I would add to what keeps us up at night is that we're operating in the financial reality of whatever our companies are operating in, and which is for us likely mostly out of our control, right? So we're operating where we are being judged and compensated on Nielsen results, and people are using our products in a universe that is much larger than terrestrial radio and Nielsen results. They're operating in a world where Pandora, Spotify is radio and every other piece of media that they might use during a day. We're in that universe, and yet our businesses are operating in a very insular space. So people's lack of extreme dissatisfaction with the spot loads, for instance, if you're just looking at radio, we saw it in the research project yesterday, if you're just looking at radio, it's about the same. Yeah, we don't like commercials, but there you go. But if you look at the whole universe of media usage, you'll see that people do leave to go use another piece of media, on some occasions. So we're making decisions just based upon radio as we know it, but the usage of radio is in a context that is much larger. And so I don't know the answer to what you're asking because it's very, very difficult. We have federally licensed radio stations that we're operating, and that comes with a whole different set of expectations and necessity of the things we need to do all day that are very different from a DSP, but we're all being used by the users in very different ways.
And if we take that same question, the challenge of the format and its erosion on the local level, Buzz, Brent, what would you say you're looking at both of you having heritage radio stations with big, big ratings?
So I'll echo what Scott said and kind of dumb it down. We have to offer something that
Please dumb it down.
we have to offer something that is not available anywhere else. And I don't know the full answer to that, but crazy could definitely be it. You put on Pandora or some of these other DSPs, there's no personalities, and so we have to give people a reason to seek us out specifically, and then grow from there. If the playing field, on my car, I've got 4 other options besides AM and FM, and that's terrifying because we always thought we dominated the dashboard. As long as we dominate the dashboard, we're going to be fine. And now all of a sudden, these other services are available in my car, and they're just a push away, just like 99.5 is in my local market. And so we have to give people a reason to come. And maybe it's crazy people, maybe it's a big giant contest, but we have to offer something that is different and compelling.
Yeah, I talk to our staff, every chance I get and say the question we should ask all the time is, why KUZZ? Why would a listener decide with all the other options out there, why KUZZ? And maybe it's a piece of information. Maybe, listening to Spotify isn't going to tell you that the freeway is closed right now. Or maybe it's because I saw that guy on his Instagram story and I thought he was really funny. I want to hear what he's going to do tonight. Or maybe it's an experience. I don't just mean contesting when I say an experience. I think it kind of speaks to that crazy. But I think the local thing is still a big thing.
I'll agree with that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I'll agree with that. But I'll also expand and say, you can get your weather and your traffic information and the time and all that stuff on your phone now. So again, it's on that same screen that consumers are using our product for, streaming. We have to do those because there's revenue attached to them, and I think it's time to have that conversation. Do we need traffic reports on the radio? Maybe, maybe not, but right now we're doing them largely because there's revenue attached to them, and people can get that information real time and specific to them better from other sources. Maybe that isn't compelling to them from radio anymore.
Yeah, and one of the things that Marian, Miranda's manager, yesterday said in the Women in Country session, we need more shepherds and less sheep. And so one of the things, that I've discussed in conference rooms of those stations I consult today is, how do you ignore Lil Nas X and Billy Ray? How do you, what happened in the days when we would take a song like that, give it to a morning guy, let him pound it 3 times a day for 2 weeks, take phone calls, or have Blanco Brown dance competitions out and about. Yesterday, I'm sitting in Kitchen Notes, and I look up, and it's snowing in Nashville. Now, those of you who live north don't know that that creates a panic and a rush on bread, milk, and toilet paper. And if I were a PD, I would have run in and said, somebody play It's Beginning to Look a Lot Like Christmas. It's 1:45. Don't you think that's part of our problem, is back to what you're saying in the crazy, that we have become this homogenized thing? And like Marian said, it's all the sheep. Beverly?
So crazy's just part of it, but I think what you're talking about is, maybe isn't crazy, but it's the ability to be in the moment and pay attention in a radio station, and that's hard to do when you're being pulled in so many different directions. You might be you might be programming for your market and maybe another sister market or another 2 sister markets and voice tracking on 3 stations and so forth. And then suddenly that creative thought of, oh, look, it's snowing. What could I do in this moment right now to connect with the audience? Those moments are so fleeting. And if you don't catch them right now, they're gone. That I think that's the reality of day-to-day programming right now, is that we're pulled in so many directions.
Beverly,
You
it's
guys
really
know
hard
that?
to do that too if your midday guy is voice tracked from another market and the show was recorded 2 days ago. He doesn't know that it's snowing. How do you make that happen?
That's not crazy, right? That's just our attention is split in so many different directions.
True, but there's got to be a way around that, right? I mean, but you are right. When I saw that and the folks I was having lunch with, and I said, man, if I was a PD in Nashville, I'd run and drop that song in right now. And the conversation went around, well, the music's probably already scheduled. But really? I mean, how sad is that? And you are right that we're, when I was a PD in the late 70s and early 80s, I had one radio station. That was it.
The talent we still have an advantage of talent that have a trust and a bond with the audience, especially the compelling talents. And we're somewhat still seen as tastemakers. So back to the art of teasing and it's in the setup, if you give me a reason, you can almost get away with putting anything on the radio. If you can put it in the right context and give it a setup and say, even if it's a new song, and you're able to say, listen, is this acceptable to country music? Is this pushing the boundaries? And you engage people. You ask for their feedback. We have two-way extensions, Twitter, Instagram. I'm a voracious student and reader of what's next, TikTok. TikTok's managed to redefine the way ads are done, and I think that's a challenge radio has. But also the tastemakers and the power we have gives us the ability to create compelling, interesting ways of innovating and trying things. I think we do need to try new things. I was having a conversation earlier this morning about where music is, what is country. 40 years ago, if you played a montage of what country was 40 years ago and what people consider as normal today, it would shock that we'd have a whole station of Nas X, when you run it back to back. And yet, it's evolved, it's changed. I think when people are exposed to more sounds and styles, it's tremendous. And I would argue that the country format performs at its very best when there's a variety of styles. And let's just say 1 is traditional and 10 is pop and pushing the edges. When you have 1s, 2s, 4s, 5s, 9s, we do really, really well as a format. I think that's been historically part of the format. But when everything muddles to the middle and becomes a 5, at least the music part of what we do, and as a music station, it's an important foundation. We muddle to the middle and we become uninteresting. There's different, there was the bro country, there's the girlfriend songs now. The industry to the sheep theory, all chasing that sound. So when we can get the diversity in styles and sound, and we can use our talent and integrate our abilities to give it context, I think we perform better. And let the audience make the decision. They're listening to all kinds of things that they never would have thought of before because it's right there. That's on their dashboard. They just punch, oh, hey, what about that new song? The Jack format, playing what we want. Tremendous success. And what's interesting about it is Jack as a brand is a interesting, quirky thing that gives permission for it to be okay. When you go to that station, you know what the expectation is. I think we have to think beyond just, or we're going to be slaves to the music cycle. We really do have to be a disruptor and think differently on how to get different things that hook people in. The format we're all proud of, and using our staff and our talent and our stationality to do that. I think somewhat gives you insurance against the music cycles. And then when you do have a good music cycle, my gosh, you've got, an extra shot in the arm.
Yeah, and just to build on that, I think the more trust, and it definitely takes time and it takes the right talent, I think the more you build that trust and that brand with your audience, the longer your leash gets. they'll follow you, and they will want to see, what you're doing and what comes next. I mean, that's the goal is every day to have somebody say, did you hear what they're doing? And stay top of mind with
Yeah,
the
that's
brand
back to the
awareness.
word of mouth.
Yeah.
Hey, did you hear what they're doing? Yes, where? Well, you know what? Where is hopefully my frequency. Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's where it's happening.
But yeah, I think you gain more credibility the more you give people a reason to consider you credible.
And I think to add to that, more than ever, what's acceptable to the audience is our audience. And we've never had more instantaneous feedback than we have in our social streams, right? You can put a song up, you can vote, you can ask questions, you get instantaneous feedback. When have we ever had, last 10 years, I'm saying.
Never, because we always put all the request lines on hold.
That's right, they'd be blinking.
So we never had those. Speaking of talent, and how many of you still talk up records in your car, songs in your car? How many of you, started in your basement or your attic emulating air talent? We always hear that, well, there's nobody young that wants to be on the air today, and yet there are more people out there on YouTube, as you've said, on TikTok and all the various formats, who have advantages that we didn't have prior to that. Where are you finding talent, Buzz? How do you find talent?
I'm pretty lucky that I'm in a university town, so we have the University of Arizona in Tucson has its own radio station, and so we feed in folks who want to get into promotions, do internships, that kind of thing. That gives us the opportunity to kind of evaluate what their strengths and opportunities might be within the building and grow them from there. We've taken folks from promotions into full-time on the air, well, part-time on the air, then full-time on the air. And, some of the people that have come through our building, one is a general manager now at a radio station on the Navajo Nation. He started with us out of college. One is a program director in Cumulus, within Cumulus. He's been in some major markets and now is in Boise working for us. So we're pretty proud of the track record we've had, but it is tough to find those people because they are drawn in a lot of different ways these days. I mean, I saw a stat not too long ago that said, I don't know, in China, I think the average kid wants to be an astronaut, and in the U.S., the average kid wants to grow up and be a YouTuber. Well, that's kind of what we're doing, We're looking for those quirky, weird, crazy people. And so we have to be open to recruit from that pool, and maybe their dream will be to want to be on the radio then again.
And you have a real life situation, right?
Yeah, right now. And when I took over as PD about 4.5 years ago, I knew it was the biggest challenge I was going to face because at the time, and we're lucky to be in a very unique heritage situation. When I started, just about all the air talents were 25 plus years on the air. And so we knew with retirements and different things that were coming, we were going to have to slowly, restock the cupboard. And I also come from a really unique situation in that our station in its history for over 50 years has never voice tracked even one time. We always have had someone live on the air.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And so, it's not just full-time talent, it's trying to find part-time talent and people that are willing to be in there on Thanksgiving Day and all those things. But it has been a challenge. I mean, most recently, and you're talking about the real-life situation, back in December, our 30-plus year kind of morning anchor retired, and we're currently in the search. It's interesting to kind of balance the different people in the building that are potentially options to put in the morning versus kind of looking outside and seeing what's possible. But throughout the time that I've been PD, our midday person actually started as a listener and is in. We did something a year or so ago where we asked people, have you ever thought about being on the radio? Submit a video on our Facebook and just show us your personality. We're not asking you to talk over something. Just talk to us. Tell us why you think you'd be a great. And somebody that's on the air with us now on the weekends kind of came from that. But it is an interesting path to navigate because, some of maybe the more traditional ways you'd look, a lot of small and medium people where they're at in their markets, they're really happy, and that's great. They've found stable situations. So trying to kind of cull from there, or, if you're looking outside, trying to find somebody that's not just that person just really wants to meet Luke Bryan the next time they're in town. But it definitely is a challenge.
I think we need to bring the sexy back because when I look for recruiting and talent, the sex appeal in our business has become dull, part because of the industry, But rebranding what we do, and I'll give you a great example. We were posting an ad for a board operator. Now, if you're just getting into this business and you see an ad for a board operator, ooh, who wants to, that just doesn't sound exciting, doesn't sound sexy at all. But if you post it as a digital content producer to light up your Twitter, you know, we're looking for the next TikTok famous, this, that, the amount of emails that came in. Oh, and by the way, on the list of responsibilities was, oh, you've got to learn how to operate the board. But the kind of person that would connect with and be relevant to today is the kind of person that I'm looking for. By show of hands, how many of you have ever been to the podcast movement? Okay, if you're not, I would encourage you to go, because 4 years ago I walked into a room in Chicago, Illinois, where the podcast movement was, I think, in its second year, and there were 2,000 highly engaged, entertaining, energetic, self-expressionists dying to connect, create, and entertain. And as I went to session after session after session, what I heard were a lot of the basics of what we practice, we take for granted, that we know every day, how to set up, how to engage, how to, you know, beginning, middle, end. And these people were wide-eyed, but they thought they were hearing things for the first time. Oh my God, it was so great, writing big checks, and I'm going, where are all the radio people? You know, at that time, Fred Jacobs and his company, on the forefront of it, a handful of radio guys. Hubbard was there, but it was blank. So you know, I looked at that and I said, wow, and started to talk to those people. Brought some of them over, and because they're all collaborators and influencers, they're sharing their stories. And I feel like I've got a special secret sauce and channel of talent and interest, and I'm engaging in dialogue with a body of crazies. Okay, I try to make sure they're not also lazy, but if they want to work hard and really do it, I've set the bar pretty high, and they're coming at me. They're enthusiastic, they're excited to just come in and learn how to run the board, because they're already innately, you know, growing up with all of this social media around them. To your point, what do they want to be, an astronaut or a YouTuber? They want to be a YouTuber, you know? And so I couldn't see everybody's hands. I feel like I'm a chimpanzee in a zoo trying to look through, you know, the sea here. But I would encourage you to go there and see those, experience the energy in that room versus where broadcasters are. And I think we should take a lesson from that and bring back the sexy.
The cool thing about those people that Scott's talking about is that they have no discomfort in front of a camera or a microphone. And so it can be a pretty short learning curve for them to get them into what we need them to do. And they're there and wide-eyed and really want to do more in that space.
In a few minutes, we'll take questions. If you have questions, you can go to the CRS app and enter your questions, and RJ will come up on stage and read those, and we'll answer them in just a few minutes. Back to the podcasting thing real quick. Scott and I serve in a couple different committees, and we were sitting on one once, and he said, we took a production room and put the sign over it. Instead of saying production room, it said podcast studio. And it changed the whole feeling of that room.
Yeah, it's the board operator or digital content editor. Same thing.
Yeah.
Just simple things. It doesn't cost us anything, and yet it brings such a different dynamic because you're becoming relevant to what people, wow, well, that got my attention. Yeah.
If you're a corporate programmer, you're wondering where you're going to find program directors. If you are a program director, you wonder, to what Buzz said early on, how you grow either into a corporate role or larger radio stations. You know, how's that talent pool look, Beverly? You're in a position where you hire PDs.
How does the talent pool look?
Yeah, is it shallow? Where do you find them? How do you bring them along?
There are many program directors looking for work and wanting to move up in their careers. Some of them have the skill sets. Some of them are lacking in some significant areas because of the kinds of companies that they've come from. I find finding the people that I described earlier that have both the operational skills and talent coaching and the creative piece, finding all of those together is hard. It's hard. And for the people that have those skills across the board, they're well compensated and their companies recognize it, and they're hard to get to come join you. But there are a lot of program directors out there. I wish that I had more program directors to choose from when we hire that have more skills like Scott is encouraging in his company. The new thing that I get a lot of is, 30-year broadcast veteran and so forth, and that's great because experience is good. I love experience, but having a full toolkit to come and do radio in 2020 is really important. And those kinds of things that Scott's talking about, those skills that's a very difficult find, to have someone that's good with people, good with the technology vision for where the industry is going. That's hard to find altogether.
You and I sat together yesterday in a session and opined a little bit about finding female program directors. As someone who was known as the adult contemporary consultant for years, I would stand up at conferences and say, I'm looking for female PDs, send me your packages, and not get very much. What are our challenges there? You've certainly been someone who's shattered the glass ceiling, having been on air, a program director, a general manager, a corporate programmer, multiple times.
I don't know what the answer is. I know that my individual situation is different than most women. I'm married with a husband who is willing to move with me, and I don't have children. But if I was married to a man who could not move with his job and had children, this would be a very difficult career path for me to take. I don't know what the answer is. Some women make it work. If I had children, it's not the choice that I would have made. But the family plus being a program director is very difficult. There are bar gigs to do, and it's a very, very demanding weekend schedule, and it's very difficult. Now, making the choice, I will tell you this. I have experimented with ad copy when we go looking for PDs, trying to target ads when we put help wanted ads up to women to see if I can get a larger pool of women. Even doing that, I've not found the secret yet. I hope someone has a question out there they can send up, but it's hard. It's hard to get candidates. I would say for every PD, you guys hire PDs too. Tell me what you think, but I bet it's 10 to 15 to 1 men to women applicants that I see. Every time I get one, I reach right back out and try to connect.
Yeah.
If they seem qualified, it's really hard, and I don't know the answer, Mike, but we need more women.
Yeah, definitely.
We do.
Particularly female-targeted formats.
Yes.
I mean, definitely. So the promotion budgets are gone. The days of, 2 music tests a year, a market study every year. You're going to launch a campaign. I'm not even saying these tactics are, what you would use today. But in the old days, you had 100 showing of billboards and 300 grips a week of television, and you promoted and marketed every spring and every fall, and you gave away thousands of dollars. Now we have balloons and, if we're lucky, hot dogs at remotes. How do you handle it?
Well, I think there are a lot more tools at our disposal, specifically social media. I think social media is where everyone's at. I mean, we've talked about this now multiple times. The smartphone is sort of. I think it's really about being where they are. I don't know that people put stickers on cars or things anymore, but just being in front of them and figuring out different ways to do that, and not to kind of just shift it right back to talent, but talent is a big part of it. It's being able to connect with people, not just on your show, but on your socials, out in person, being someone that somebody can invest in, a listener can invest in, because that's ultimately what kind of keeps moving forward, and people still following you and wanting to kind of know more. that's the best promotion there is building your own brand and infusing it back into the station so that people just want to keep coming back.
And Buzz, you had said when we did our prep call, your newest air talent's 15 years at the station. Do you still get them to go out? Do you still do appearances? Do you motivate them? How do you do that?
Yeah, it's tough because, you know, I've got somebody who's been there well over 20 years, 25 years, and the most recent hire full-time was that's still there is 15 years or so. And it can be tough to keep them creative, keep them motivated, keep them excited, keep them fresh. You know, we sometimes get in a rut. You go in the same studio every day at the same time, and you do the same things at the same benchmark times, and yada, yada, yada. Sometimes you just got to shake them and say, let's try something new. Let's do something different. Let's flip the light switch on and off so people can find something passionate about you for.
Yeah, there's a lot of truth in changing the environment. You know, how many of you go and travel or do something, get out of the box you're in, and you have a different point of view instantly? There's a lot of different ways to attack the same issues. And I wanted to share a quick story with you on a time when Lee Iacocca was struggling to turn around Chrysler. They hired this consultant, and they brought him in. They paid him $1 million. And after they did their whole thing and research, went through all the factories, and their goal was, can we increase our productivity? We're just not getting the quality and productivity we need, and we're not sure. We're trying everything. And the consultant came back in, went in front of the board of directors, made the presentation. It was one page. It said, turn up the lights. I'm like, what do you, turn up the lights? Yeah, make the lights brighter in the factories, you'll improve productivity. So they did, spent millions, put high-intensity lighting in. Lo and behold, the productivity went up by 30% because everybody felt like they were in a different environment with the new bright lights. A little while longer, productivity started to slump, level out, go down. They said, now what do? Came back in and said, turn down the lights.
Did that cost them another $1 million?
It cost them another $1 million, $2 million. I think we're in the wrong place.
I got to raise my rates.
Wow.
And you know, challenging the norms. Fortunately, I work for one of the world-class broadcasters that still believes in what we preach, right? We tell our clients, spend money on marketing, and yet we don't do it. Hubbard still has a great high standard. Research, marketing is still there. But taking the ordinary things and challenging them, I challenge our staff all the time. I say, if I hear brought to you by one more time, I'm going to shoot you. And so, and a lot of you, if you're here and if you've worked with me, you know this. You know, doing something that can get the same message projected differently and even maybe more engaging is important. The hot dog at the remote, right, Mike? Split the hot dog up, dip it in sauce, put toothpicks in it, tell people you're serving up gator tail, and then interview their reaction. What's this taste like to you? It's a hot dog dipped in sauce. And most people, ooh, I don't want the live gator tail. You're creating a buzz about giving away a hot dog. So it's turning a hot dog into something that maybe you wouldn't think normally you would do with a hot dog. Gator tail.
I love that.
Okay.
RJ, you have some questions for us?
Yes, and I'm craving gator tail right now.
Gator tail.
Great discussion. So we do have some stuff coming in the app. Scott, congratulations, you're trending on the CRS app. Some here in the room think you're a branding genius.
I'm starting to sweat.
Yeah, no, you're good. First question, we have a general question for the whole panel and then one specifically for Beverly after that. You all talked about programmer's toolbox. What tools need to be in there? Which tools are most important?
Brent, you want to start?
You know, I think for me as a programmer, I think the number one thing is leadership. And I think right there as well as integrity. You know, I think you have to be able to lead your staff with honesty. I think you have to be able to communicate and be effective, but lead by example, I think is a big thing. And so I think for me, that's the biggest thing about being a program director, or to me, the biggest tool I feel I use all the time is leading by example.
I'd like to add writing and use of language, the ability to choose words that make people feel things. I think writing is very important.
I think creating a culture where people feel confident and supported, where they can thrive, is extraordinarily important, because none of those ideas will come out and translate through the speakers unless you have the right leadership and culture for that to take place. So I encourage that to be the number one thing you do. People come into an environment, they can feel free to express themselves and experiment. Great things come from that.
The only other thing I'll add is the word trust. Trust your people, they'll trust you. That back and forth will go a long, long way.
This is targeted for Beverly, but probably anybody could take it. Beverly, when you are an employee who's getting pulled in many directions, jock, production, promotions, programming, how do you figure out where to focus your attention?
Ask your boss to share their vision with you, and ask your boss to help prioritize. Of all of the things that you're asking me to do, you could say, here's my understanding of what you're asking me to do. You're asking me to do A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, and I'm needing your help on what is most important to you to help you fulfill the vision that you have for the radio station. So we're on the same page. Help me prioritize these things, because it might change from week to week, or day to day, or year to year. I would ask for clarification, because that's a real life experience right there. That really happens every day, and sometimes you need help.
One more or no?
Yeah, I got one more. We're just about out of time, aren't we? But I'll get one more. How do you find good talent that can do all the different things we need them to do at the incredibly low salary we have to offer? And a lot of that's out of your control.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the market. If you can be, as Buzz mentioned earlier, in a college town and there's demand for it. If you're in a smaller market, I mean, it's where you're training people and encouraging them to be stellar so that they can move to a larger market, so they're throwing that football through a tire 100,000 times.
I think look for people that have interesting personalities and have something interesting to offer. You can always train them on how to run the board and all that stuff. Look for people that jump out of the speakers and are different and compelling, and train them train them how to be a radio person.
But I will say, you know, if we're in radio going to say talent is what's going to set us apart, then we need to invest in talent.
Yeah, agree.
Thank you, everybody. Please, round of applause for Buzz Jackson, Scott Mahalik, Beverly Brannigan, and Brent Michaels. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.